All right, welcome everyone to tonight's workshop for community engagement. This workshop is on emergency preparedness, re-engaging, and readiness. So we hope that you find this very informative and you stick with us through this whole presentation.
Who? A program of Vision of Equality, funded by Office of Developmental Programs. Family members across the Commonwealth Life Course
Ambassadors.
Ambassadors, thank you. The Vision Life Experience.
So that is exactly who PA Family Network is. We all have diverse backgrounds. We are all a family member of someone with a disability. And we even have 3 bilingual advisors to be able to do interpretation and Spanish workshops, and have 2 advisors that are siblings. So not just parents, we bring that sibling voice to the table as well. Nikki's going to tell a little bit more about what we do.
Yep. So what PA Family Network does is workshops for families, technical assistance, mentor families and their loved ones, team mentoring, system navigation and development,
Identifying.
identifying support and services.
And why do we do what we do?
So for individuals with intellectual and mental disabilities, IDD, the role of family is unique and often centered in the support and care provided across the lifespan. Family members play key roles in identifying and securing opportunities for their family members to participate in meaningful ways within their community and ensuring access to
Self-determined.
self-determined lives.
And that is from the Wing Spread report from their conference. That was the start of the life course framework and principles. So now we're going to talk about what is emergency preparedness. Emergencies can come in all shapes and sizes, and some are big and some are little or small, and some may be scary, and some are even over before we even know that they're happening. It can be a flood that keeps us stuck in our home or away from our home for a period of time. And maybe those flood waters are rising and we need to move to a shelter in order to remain safe. We need to make sure that we're looking at what that means and what does it look like. Or maybe it's really cold outside and the power is out in our home and we don't have heat, and we don't have, our refrigerators aren't working, and we need to figure out what we're going to do then, and whether or not we're going to move to a shelter to be able to keep warm if that power is out for multiple days. Or maybe your family member has a medical emergency and they have to go to the emergency department, or you have to stay with relatives because there was a fire in your home or in the building that you live in. All of these scenarios are emergencies, and all of them can be tough, but we can plan and make it a little easier on ourselves if we do some things ahead of time to prepare us in case of an emergency. An important thing to think about is that people with disabilities often have more trouble in emergencies because they lose their support system. Their staff may not show up, or they can't go to a program, or their schedule or their routine is completely thrown off, or it's non existent because of that emergency. Being prepared can help make people better in a real life emergency. And bear with us 2 seconds. I think our interpretation, I just want to make sure that it's still on. Okay. Sorry about that. We had a technical issue. All right. So we're going to go through a couple of steps here. And the first thing that we're going to look at is how we start. Emergency preparedness really involves the following that's listed here: being informed, making a plan, assembling a kit, and maintaining that plan that we've made and the kit that we've created. So we're going to go through all of these steps, and then we're going to include some other information that you'll find really important. So number one is knowing what kind of information you need to know, or you need to keep safe somewhere, keep somewhere safe, so that if an emergency happens, you have quick access to these papers and this information when that emergency is going on. So if you have an ID, if you have a marriage license, your birth certificate, things like that, you can make copies of them and keep all of that information together. And if you have to know where to get information in an emergency, you can look at things like an app that's on your phone, or from the local TV station, in order to be able to get notifications when an emergency is happening. You can also look at the agency that you work with to make sure that they are providing you information on knowing what to do in an emergency. And then we also have to think about whether or not you know how to call 911, or to call for help, and whether that's 911 or a non-911 number. And when you use each of those in situations that you may find yourself in. So in larger disasters or emergencies, you will find shelters by downloading the FEMA mobile app. That's FEMA mobile app. You can also visit the American Red Cross website. You can even text shelter and your zip code to the number 4 and FEMA. That's 43362. And they will send you a list through text messages of shelters that are nearby to you, so that you can find one if a large disaster or an emergency happens near you. And many times families make a plan, but that person with a disability isn't really involved in that plan, or they're involved in the beginning, but they don't practice it or repeat it. We need to make sure that this is regular and this is engaging for our loved ones or for ourselves, and that we're really planning what's going to happen, what we're going to do if an emergency happens or a disaster is nearby to us. Like I said earlier with my son, we make sure that he's included in every step, because it's important for him to know what to do. And hopefully, as he gets older, if he is not with us, he will still keep those things in mind that we've practiced, so that if an emergency happens, he'll still know what to do at that point. So in making a plan, you want to identify people who will be able to help you in an emergency. We call that a personal care team. This can be family, friends, neighbors, even staff that you have working with you, anybody that you find might be an important part of your team during an emergency, you'll want to know who they are and have information about them, contact information for them written down so that you can easily access it if an emergency happens. And you'll want to write down what you and your personal care team will do in an emergency. It can be elaborate or it can be pretty simple. You can use a notebook or you can use papers on a clipboard. You can even use pictures in order to help you understand or remember different things that you need to do. But there definitely needs to be a plan with all that important information to keep an individual safe in an unexpected situation or an emergency. So like I said, your plan can be simple or complicated. And a plan is definitely personalized and about you. And there are many different options that you can choose to do. We'll show you several different types of plans and emergency sheets. What you use is up to you. You don't even have to use one of the ones we show you. You can find something else that you like even better. But it needs to be a plan and it needs to be written down so that others know your plan as well. You want to make sure that you have this readily available so that if something happens, you can easily grab it and start working through that plan. Your plan may include people to call to begin with to say that there's an emergency happening. So that could be the first sheet that is written in your document. And you need to have that easily accessible in order to grab it and start making those phone calls as soon as you can when that emergency happens. So we're going to show you a couple of documents, like I said. We'll also tell you where we found those documents so that you can download them yourself, or we may email them out. I'm not quite sure if we do or not, but I will find out on that too. So this is a very efficient resource that's put out by Temple University. If you want a good way to create a plan for yourself, this is a great document to do that with. I know that some of the information on our slides is going to be small, but when you download it from Temple University directly, they will be full sheets that you can print out and handwrite everything in, or you should be able to type into it from the computer as well. This document, this guide works well for many people, and you can keep this in your go bag or in your desk at work, in your car, at your friend's home, wherever you spend time and you may need it, you can keep a copy of it available for you. If you carry a bag with you normally, or you carry a purse, you can keep it in that bag or that purse in order to have it with you pretty much all of the time. And I'm reading a note now that says a copy of this resource will be sent along with this presentation tonight. So you will get a link to this resource to be able to download it, and you'll have that full page to be able to enter information in, because this is quite tiny to read. And I know that it's small, but this is essentially you. This is information that you need to know, or people need to know about you. So this can be things like your current health issues or diagnoses, how you communicate, and really it's just checking off what the best way you communicate with people on, such as how you understand things, how you express yourselves, whether you can answer questions by yes or no, or you can answer simple questions, or you can give detailed answers. You can write and read, That kind of information is on there because that's important for others to know about you if they are going to help you in an emergency. It also talks about your lifestyle, such as people that are your family that you are close to or that you may be with, where you're working, hobbies that you do, your religious preferences, so that if you are in a shelter, that if they have services for the religion that you are involved in, then they will let you know that so that you can go to those services and work through your faith. It also describes limitations that you may have, such as vision loss or hearing loss, mobility issues, cognitive issues, or anything else that you might find important. And then it also lists emergency contact information so that somebody can reach out to people that are your emergency contacts if you're not able to do it yourself. For instance, if you lost your phone in an emergency, then first responders may be able to use that document to call your emergency contact to say, I'm with this person, they are safe, they are not hurt. We just wanted to let you know that they lost their phone, but they are okay. Other things to think about are other important people that are in your life, things that you may have that you may not carry on you, such as a living will, or that you don't want to be resuscitated if you are non-responsive, or that you have a healthcare proxy if something does happen. Also include your insurance information, or other information that people may find relevant to be able to help you, such as foods, music, TV shows that you like, your nickname or pronouns that you go by, anything else that you want to include there in order to make yourself more comfortable with those that may need to help you. Now, remember, in this page specifically, insurance information is extremely important to list on here so that others have it. If you are not able to produce an insurance card at that point in time, then they can pull it off of this document and be able to have it. So many people work too, or even volunteer. And you need to have a plan for that place, whether that's your place of employment or the place you're volunteering at. What happens if there's an emergency while you're at work or volunteering and you need to take action? Whether that's moving to a shelter, or you need to leave work because there's a fire in the building, you need to have that plan written up, and you need to have action steps, or you can have action steps in order to know what exactly to do. Being at work or volunteering means that you may be separated from family or other people that you're normally with. So if you have that information written up, then you'll know what to do in an emergency. And you can give this information to others that may be at that place of employment or that the place that you're volunteering at, so that they know how to help you. The other employees or the staff that you're volunteering with knows how to help you if an emergency arises. And I know it's small, but just reading off a few of these things. How will I get information in an emergency? This is the top section. I need instructions given in plain English or ASL or Spanish if you are Spanish speaking. That's just one example that kind of, so you know what kinds of information are listed there. And actions is how will I get where I need to be? And you can have things like, I can follow directions, or I can follow a specific person. I could use transportation, specific transportation, or I have people that I work with or that are in the place that I volunteer that are trained to transport me to another location. Or maybe you need assistance, and this is the bottom section, and you list out how you need assistance. I have arranged a buddy system, and these people know to come help me. Or I can show first responders my medical ID bracelet, my wallet, my ID, or my diagnosis card, or an emergency plan so that first responders can help me. All of that information is relevant, but it should be personalized to you specifically, and you should have this to be able to carry with you if an emergency does happen. So this is a great list for a supply bag or a go bag. And you can have one, you can put one together. And we'll talk more about go bags as we get further along in this workshop. But really, it's your go bag is going to have things that we've already talked about. All of that information should be included in your go bag. It should also include things like a first aid kit, a couple of days of medication that you take, so that if you are not able to come home or you don't have your medication readily available, you will have it in your go bag. If you have pets, you'll have pet supplies. You may need a set of clothing, spare keys, extra cash, even a wheelchair tire patch kit if you use a wheelchair. There's lots of different information or different lists out there that you can search to see what should be included in your emergency preparedness go bag. We will delve into that a little bit more later on. But you want to know that, in addition to all of this, that you need things like food and water also readily available for a 72-hour kit. You want to figure that if you're going to have to use this stuff, you plan for it to be for about 72 hours. Important documents that you want to include in that is, I already mentioned a copy of your photo ID, prescriptions, a list of medication, who's taking that medication, the dosage, who prescribed that medication, and what the medication is used for. If you don't have a lot of medication with you, if you have all of that information readily available, then you can have someone that may be able to help you get those medicines if you need them. The original documents should be kept in a safe place. They should not be kept in your go bag. You should always keep copies in your go bag. And if you can laminate them, or in the instance of photo ID, even if you take packing tape and cover it so that it is almost like a lamination, that protects it if there is a flood, if there's a lot of water, that those documents don't get damaged. They can still be read because they are laminated. And then this also talks about what you can do after a disaster, such as needing help repairing your home or replacing belongings. You may need help with emergency medical or mental health assistance. There are different places that you can call to be able to reach out to if an emergency happens and you're coming back after that emergency or that disaster, and you're looking for ways in order to repair or replace things that you've lost during that. So that document is also going to be included in the email that is sent out after this workshop. So you will have all of that information readily available for you.
Jane's emergency plan. So this is talking about a plan to have So for example, grab your bag, meet at mailbox, call mom, call Bob, call neighbors if no answer.
Right. So if
Okay.
someone wasn't able to read very well, this would be great, right, Nikki?
Yes, because it has pictures and it also has words. So for example, me is actually easier because I could look at the picture and I could also read a little, but not so long of words.
Right. So this is great for snapshots because you can look at it and immediately know who to call. So Nikki, you said earlier that you get anxious
Yes.
and maybe you aren't able to read the words so well because you're anxious, but seeing those pictures will really help you know who you should be calling or where you should be going, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Communication is key. Name, address, phone number, emergency contact. Plan and practice who to contact in an emergency or a situation where is
Uncertainty.
uncertainty. Contact can be set up by pictures and or emergency. So for example, it's always good to have contact information. It could be like, for example, if you have a phone, you could have some contacts there, or for example, you could have a little like card, and it could have your name, your address, your phone number, and emergency contact. That way, if something does happen, they know where to call or know what they could help you with.
Yeah.
Do you need extra help? So, for example, these pictures show different ways to communicate. So, for example, there's one example where they're communicating by sign. There's another example where it shows pictures of different things. So, if, for example, there's a picture about I want puzzles and different things, that's actually a communication device, and that you could put different things you need if someone does not know how to communicate. I have a cousin that has autism and he's nonverbal, and he uses a communication device so that way he can communicate what he wants and needs.
And you want to make sure that you're documenting all of this information in your plan. If you use any of these types of things or you need assistance with a wheelchair or access for a wheelchair, you want to make sure that's documented in your plan so that others know about it and can help provide that information or provide that access if you are in an emergency.
Meeting plan. Plan a safe place to meet someone from your personal care team. So for example, I practiced this before when I used to go to school, and they used to like tell us to make a picture of your house and make a plan of where you gotta exit and where you gotta meet people. And
Mhm.
it's important to do that because you don't know what will happen if a situation comes where there's smoke or there's different things like that. Even at my job, we practice that as well because it's a big building and actually it's important because where I work, we're in the basement. So we need to get out quick and know where we're going to get out.
Right. And you need to get far enough away that, for instance, if it were a fire, that
Mhm.
you're not going to get hurt because of that fire, but meet other people.
Yep.
So we have the same situation in our home. We've told our son that if something happens in our home, we are to meet at the end of our neighbor's driveway. So we have a plan, to be able, even if we aren't able to get out together, we can meet at that place that's far enough away, and hopefully, that we stay safe in getting there, but that's where we would connect with one another.
And also have another important thing with this
Yeah.
is if, for example, someone, like for example, me, I nervous laugh and people think is is that I'm laughing. I will
Right.
get more into that part later on, but people think it might be not so serious for me, but it is. It's just a way that I react, and also if people like have uh different things where they're not comfortable with noises like I am as well. People also have to have a plan of how they gotta exit and meet
Yep.
because they could get nervous and just freeze there. So they have to like know how to get out without getting like for example me, I will first breathe and then I will just get out because I know it's the safest way for me to get out.
Exactly. And Nikki, what's the one thing that you should grab before you leave? Do you remember? Your go bag.
Nothing. Yeah, you
No,
go
you
back.
should grab your go bag, right? Because it
Yes,
has all your important information in it, and a lot of things that will help you, like medication. And it could have food or water
yes.
that you may
It's
need over the next couple of days.
yeah, and it's good to have one or two in different places too. Like it's good to have one up in your room and it's good to have one like downstairs
Right.
or something where you know where to get it from if you're quick.
Absolutely. And moving on to our to-go bag. So another part of this is part 3 of this section. Another important part of the planning process is to prepare that go bag. It's a bag that you'll carry with you in an emergency if you have to leave your house. If you think of all the wildfires that happen in like California and Oregon and that, and the fires start getting closer and people have to evacuate their homes, they can have a go bag that is packed and ready to go, that if they declare an emergency and they have to evacuate their home, they can quickly grab that bag and be able to get out of that area quicker than if they had to pack everything all up when that emergency was declared. So you keep it with you if you have to stay in your home during an emergency too. For instance, like we had a bad ice storm here back, but right before Christmas, that if we were not able to leave our home for a couple of days and we had lost power, it could have food rations and water rations in it in order to make sure that we can sustain ourselves until our power came back on in our home. So the bag will hold supplies that you need to stay safe and healthy during an emergency. And then that way, you know that it's readily available. Now, what kind of stuff should you include in your bag? We've already given a couple of lists, but should you pack some clothing and medication and cans that are easy to open, those pop tap lids that you can peel back, a toothbrush, things like that. Should you pack your game system, your PlayStation 5 or my son's Nintendo Switch? Probably not. For him, he would say that's important, right? But it's not a necessity. So
Even me.
no. Go ahead.
Even me.
Yeah, you would say it's important. Yeah. So know that there are things that you should keep in there, but it's not everything that is important to you in the moment. It's definitely things that are essential to you living. The type of bag does not matter. It can be any type of bag that works for you, something that you can grab quickly and carry it easily. So you don't want a bag that's too large or too heavy. You don't want a bag that's too small and isn't going to hold everything. And what may work for me and my family may not work for Nikki and her where she lives. So know that each person may have their own thing and it may be different for each person, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it as long as you have that information together. So this is a very simple graphic that gives ideas about what might be good to put in that go bag. Some things are absolutely essential to everyone. That's where I was saying, the food, whether it's protein bars, canned goods that have those tab lids that are easy to peel back, jerky, even plenty of water for everyone that you that would be with you, even flashlights with batteries, a radio. I just, as a matter of fact, for Christmas, got my husband a radio with a flashlight that's all included in one, but it's one of the crank ones, so that no, we don't need any batteries for it. As long as we crank it, then it will play for a little bit, so we can hear any kind of broadcast that may come through the radio. Plus we have a flashlight with it. You may want to pack hand sanitizer, deodorant, wipes, a change of clothing or two, first aid kit, dental care, other things that may be important to you, your personal information, communication boards that you've printed out and laminated so that you have them readily available if you need them. If you have a pet, make sure that you're packing pet food, things like that. You want to put in what is most important to you. So what I have in my go bag is going to be completely different from what Nikki has, because we're in two different areas. We have different family dynamics. I have a dog. Nikki, do you have any pets?
Nope.
Nope. So I'm going to make sure that I include dog food and water for my dog, where Nikki doesn't have to worry about that.
Nope.
So many things should go into that go bag, but know that, like I said already, you don't want it to be too heavy. I already talked about all your personal papers. If you can laminate them, it doesn't cost much to get that done from an office supply store, or if you have a friend or even the library may laminate them for you. Make sure that you're putting chargers in there. If you have a solar charger, if you don't have electricity, you may still be able to charge some things if you have a solar charger. Phone numbers that are important to you for your contacts, VIN numbers for technology and equipment that you might use or need, cash, bank cards. If the power's out, the bank cards aren't going to work. So you may need cash. Any card titles, you can keep copies of those in your go bag. Marriage license, divorce decrees, birth certificates, all of that kind of information is important to you. Those personal papers, make a copy of them, laminate them, and keep them in your go bag. Other things that you might want to have could be a waterproof poncho or a raincoat. What else? Light sticks in case your flashlight goes out. You can break light sticks like the glow sticks and be able to use them. Even emergency drinking water pouches or those tablets that help clean water. If you don't have enough water rations, you might be able to get to a water source and use one of those tablets or those pouches to help clean the water so you can drink it. Things like that are all important to include in that go bag. Now, if you're a waiver participant, you may qualify for your own fully loaded go bag that we will talk more about at the end of this workshop. So stay tuned. It is valued at over $100. It does look like that picture on the left there. So we will provide more information close to the end of this workshop. Ooh, I totally did not mean to do that. I am so sorry. Let's get back to it. All right. The fourth thing in our plan is to maintain that plan. You want to practice it. We've talked about this a couple of times now. Practice the plan so that you know what to do in an emergency. The more that it's practiced by everybody, disability or not, the easier it's going to come into your mind when a true emergency happens. We all know that your anxiety kicks in, your adrenaline's going, you're not going to remember everything if an emergency happens. The more that you can plan for it and you practice it so it becomes second nature, the more that you will be able to do without consciously thinking about it if an emergency happens in your area. You also want to make sure that you're keeping your contacts updated and remind those contacts about the plan. And then last, you're going to check your meeting place and make sure that it's still the right spot to meet others if you get separated from them or you leave your home. If your emergency is in your home, if you leave your home at different places, different locations, and that is you're going to your meeting place, you want to make sure that it's still available to be able to meet there. I recently installed a fence around my backyard. If my neighbors said, we're going to meet at the far end of our neighbor's property, meaning my property, if they can't get into my backyard now because I have a fence, they need to think about their meeting place and change that to have to meet somewhere different because they no longer have access to my backyard. That's just an example of one of the things that can happen and why you need to check that meeting place to make sure that it is still available for you. And then maintain your bag. You want to keep items fresh, rotate food and water and medications. You don't want to leave things sit in there so that the food or the medication is expired. And then if you do truly need it in an emergency, you can't use it because it's expired. You want to keep that bag in a safe place. You don't want to have it in a place that's extremely hot or cold. You don't want your water freezing all the time, or you don't want medications going bad because it's in too hot of a location and they end up not being good anymore. You want to make sure that you are checking the paperwork in it. If your insurance updates every year, my insurance, for instance, I get a new insurance card every year. If that happens, you want to make sure that you're making a copy of that and including it in your go bag every at the beginning of every year, so that that information is updated for the that year then.
Now we're going to talk about safety skills, the next step. Safety skills. There are many safety skills that are essential for everyday emergencies. These include carrying a ID, knowing your name, address, phone, knowing people in your community, knowing recording
Recognizing.
recognizing first responders. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
So it's very important to carry all these things, and also knowing where you put them as well, because you have to know how you're gonna get them quick without you panicking if it's very like a fast emergency and you have to get out. Like if there's smoke, you have to know like where to get things from.
Mhm. Nikki, are you going to remember everything and if an emergency happens? Or could you put some information into your phone to be able to help you remember stuff so that you don't have to think of it off the top of your head?
Is with me it's a little hard because me writing is not so well. So that's actually a good question. So for me it's better to have it with me, or also writing typing something where I have it somewhere nearby, because if I don't have my phone it's good for me to carry something else just in
Right.
case I don't have my phone.
Yeah. So there are lots of different options for having all of this info, right? You
Yep.
don't necessarily have to try to remember it off the top of your head.
No,
You can
there's
hear.
people that have like necklace that has your information in the back,
Yeah.
or even a bracelet.
Yep. And one of those options is this.
Yep, an ID. An ID is an important thing to have because it has your information. So it has your name, where you live.
Mhm.
It also has your birthday. It has different things where they could identify you. And also, I found this interesting that you could have an ID in Pennsylvania of the age of 10 years old.
Mhm. And so that brings up a really good point, because if they have an ID at 10 years old, they can start learning to carry that ID, right?
Yep, but also too, there's some kids that don't understand how to carry things.
Right.
So sometimes it might be hard for them.
Right.
Or
Yeah, but that's a safety skill that they can start working on.
yeah,
And even if they have to take small steps in order to get to the point that they are carrying their ID all the time, that's acceptable, but they're still working towards that goal. They
yeah.
can even make a copy of their ID
Mhm.
and carry the copy, putting the original at home where it's safe or with someone that it's safe, and they carry a copy. So if they lose the copy, You can always make another copy, right?
But, and just like me too, I would probably would do a copy because I lose everything, and
Right.
it's important to have a copy instead of your original.
Right. Because then your original, you know, it's safe. If
Yes.
you lose the copy, it's not as bad. But yeah.
Yep.
Now, obviously, there's a cost to the photo ID, but it's definitely worth the investment. So, no. And this service may be covered by the Office of Vocational Rehab, OVR. So, check with your local office if you are connected with them, and you are working with them. Then they may have options to be able to pay for an ID for you. You will need an ID in an emergency, right, Nikki?
Yep. Because
You
it's very
definitely will need it.
important.
And you'll need to be with your supports, the family or staff that you have. But if you get separated, having that ID means that people know who you are, especially if communication is difficult, like verbal communication is difficult for you to
Mhm.
be able to say who you are. You can show the ID instead, and then they would be able to read who you are.
Yeah, and even if you are in a case where you're choking, and for example, me, I have trouble with swallowing. So if I'm in a situation where I'm choking and they're trying to say something to me and I can't, I could just give them permission to go in my bag or something if something does go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. So before an emergency happens, you want to try to get to know first responders in your neighborhood. This is another safety skill that you can add into your plans, whether that's an individual support plan or an individualized education program. You can add some of these safety skills into those plans and programs so that everybody that is working with your loved one or with you is working on these safety skills. So, visiting your local police department or fire department or even emergency management services is really important before an emergency happens. Have them get to know you or your loved one. Learn who the emergency management people are that will come in an emergency, in a disaster emergency, like a big emergency happens, tornado, floods, hurricanes, that type of thing, wildfires, because they could be different. Number one, from your township people or your city people, you could have county emergency management that may come and set up to be able to help in an emergency, and they can offer help in ways of generators or transportation. And know, if you know these people or the phone numbers in order to reach these people, they'll be able to help you in a large emergency, like I said, like flooding, blizzards, hurricanes, tornadoes, things like that. You want to, even if your local fire department has pancake breakfast or your local law enforcement does coffee or shopping with a cop, those types of things are really great to be able to meet the emergency personnel that work in those areas before a true emergency happens. I take my son to our local fire department so that he can see the people that fight fires or would show up in emergency in their full uniform, because they look different than just you and I and how we look and dress. When they have their full gear on and they have a face mask and all of the equipment that they have to wear with the oxygen tanks, and how they sound is even different. So letting him see that ahead of time when it's not an emergency is really important so that he doesn't get scared of someone and run in the opposite direction of a person that's trying to help him. So that right there is a great example of why you can go and talk to first responders and explain that you don't want your loved one, or even you yourself, you don't want to be scared if an emergency is happening. So you want to know what to expect ahead of time.
Even if you get lost or something, you know how to prepare yourself. For example, I got lost one time in the mall, and my mom, I was actually getting candy, and my mom said to me, I'm gonna be at the store. And I checked and she wasn't there. So my first instinct was to go to the security, and I was nervous, but they told me to tell them my mom's name, and
Right.
I did, and then they told me that I would be safe, and then they got my mom.
Right. Absolutely.
It was
That's a great
scary, but
story. I love it.
yeah, yep. It was scary, but it's good to just be prepared. I was
Absolutely.
about 13 or
Yeah.
12 when that happened.
But you knew what to do. And that was the important thing, is you knew who to go to because you had seen them before. They had been pointed out to you. You had talked to them potentially before.
Yeah.
And, and you knew exactly who to talk to and to stay calm in an emergency.
Yep.
It's also good for first responders to know your loved one and to know ways that they can help you or your loved one ahead of time, or know a little bit about the disability that you or your loved one have. And that is known as disclosure. So, disclosure is sharing personal information about yourself, like the fact that you like the color blue and that you have a disability. Disclosure is very important when we're talking about contacting first responders, hospital staff, shelter staff, anybody that will be helping us in an emergency. It's good to talk about disclosing information ahead of time and who we should disclose to and what we should tell them. Disclosure is very difficult for a lot of people to share that personal information about themselves with others. But deciding to disclose is one of the most personal decisions that you'll make as a person with a disability. That's whether or not to tell someone about your disability, right, Nikki? It's very personal in who you tell about a disability.
Yep, it's very personal, and we'll, I'm gonna actually tell a story about that
Mhm.
in 2 more slides. So yeah.
Yeah. And telling and how you want to tell someone about it is just as important. So that's another thing to think about. Not only um, deciding to disclose information, but how you tell that information to someone and when you tell that information to someone else.
Yep.
So this is what I was just talking about, knowing who to disclose it to, what to disclose, where, when to disclose it, and why. So not everyone needs to know. We're going to touch on each one of these points. Not everyone needs to know your personal business. Not everyone needs to know that you have a disability or that your loved one has a disability. You need to tell who needs to know about it. The shelter staff that is essentially assigned to help you have a bed, have clothing, make sure that you are safe. That is a person that you want to disclose it to. First responders that are coming to help you and that are coming into your personal space, you may decide to disclose information to them because you're not comfortable with them getting too close. That may be a time that you want to disclose, but you get to decide who to disclose that to, because it's not everyone's business of what you are telling others. And then deciding what to disclose. Do you tell people, do you tell someone everything about yourself, or just what they need to know to make sure that you get the help that you need? You want to make sure that they know enough to get you the help that you need, but you don't need to tell them what happened in fourth grade with your fourth grade teacher when they made you mad. That's not necessarily something that they need to know. But if you have medication that you are taking and you don't have a whole lot of it, they need to know that medication and that you only have a few days supply, so that they might be able to help you get it refilled.
And
Okay.
also, I think I'm gonna tell my story now. It's important, for example, it's important to also let them know, and like, for example, me, I get very nervous and anxious. So, for example, I had to actually call 911 because my my mom wasn't here, and it, me and my grandma were in the house, and we were outside in the summer, and um, uh, uh, a car ran over my mom's car,
Oh my.
and and I had to call because no one spoke English, just
Right.
me.
Yeah.
And I called and I got nervous and I started laughing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my signing of anxiousness. So
Right.
when I'm anxious and nervous, I start laughing, and the the lady in the police station, like when I call 911, she said to stop laughing, and I said I can't help it. I'm disabled,
Right.
and she hung up on me, and
Oh
then
my.
I had to call again and told them that I'm sorry, but that's how I am, and I can't help it. So then I told them. She told me just go slow, and I told them the best I could,
Right.
and that's how I was able to communicate. But it is hard. There's actually different ways now that you could um get services like that. For example, there's, I'm not sure if I'm gonna say it right. It's a service 911.
I'm not sure what you're.
The one that you put information in, and that way the police knows if,
Oh, like the special needs registries.
yeah,
Is that what
that's
you
it.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
it's
So
like,
that is disclosing information, those special needs registries. Or
yeah,
when you called 911, maybe you disclosed to the dispatcher that I have a disability. I tend to nervous laugh when I'm anxious, so
yeah,
please ignore it, or something like that,
yeah.
so that they knew.
And also that they know, like, for example, my mom is allergic to penicillin. That way they know who has a allergic reaction to
Right.
something.
Absolutely. Yep.
Mm.
So where you disclose information to a person, is sometimes just as important as who you're disclosing to.
Mhm.
You don't want to tell somebody in a loud voice in the middle of a crowded room because you don't know who's going to be hearing it.
Yep.
You may ask them to have a conversation a little bit more privately, maybe off in one section that doesn't have as many people or something like that, to be able to share that information so that not everyone hears it.
Yep, it's very important. I've done that
Absolutely.
before because you don't know who's gonna be there and who's gonna hear it.
And who's going to hear it? Yep. When you disclose information is important to make sure that you are receiving the help that you need when you need it. So when you first get to, I'm using shelter a lot because we're going to move into the shelter area topic next. But if you had to go to a shelter, you want to disclose that information when you first arrive, because after everybody has already been assigned a bed and has the information that they need, you disclose some type of information that would have helped you, is too late. So you want to tell them as soon as you can so that they can help you in a timely manner and you don't miss out on what you need in order to be safe in that situation. And then why is the same reason as when. You want to disclose it to stay safe, right? All of those things are important to help you be successful and to keep you safe in an emergency. So again, disclosure is very personal and a very personal decision. So knowing what to disclose about your disability or your loved one's disability and who to disclose it to is important. There are many different ways to disclose, such as verbally telling someone, which we were just talking about, or a card that you carry in your wallet, or even a one-page profile that you fill out that you can hand someone in an emergency. Disclosure cards are similar to identification. They're small, to like an ID card. And you can hand a disclosure card or a diagnosis card over to someone with the ID, so no one else really sees it except the person that is looking at that ID. So if law enforcement or police officer asked you for ID, you could have your diagnosis card behind your ID and hand that person, that police officer, both at the same time. And they would be able to see that information without you verbally having to say anything. Customizing these diagnoses cards are better if you can. And you can get lamination pockets at the dollar stores to help protect it so that it doesn't get all wrinkled and folded and creased, or something gets spilled on it, you'll still be able to read it. You can order them with custom information that you type in and be able to have it shipped to you, or you can download these diagnosis cards from the websites to be able to print out and then write your information in. In an emergency, an individual may be too overwhelmed to answer, or like Nikki said, she has nervous laughter because of her anxiety. Maybe she can't get out a diagnosis to disclose that information because she's having some case of nervous laughter. She can hand over a diagnosis card, right, Nikki?
Yeah, like for example, of these three, mine would be the intellectual disability,
Yep.
but also I have a physical disability. So
Right.
I could find another card that might be good for me as well.
Yeah,
And other people could do that as well.
absolutely. And it's really, individuals may be unable to clearly communicate, or their communication may be different than verbally saying it. So using a diagnosis card could really come in handy for someone else to know how to help that person if an emergency arises, or they find themselves in a situation where they have to disclose that information. Because we know that anxiety goes up, or as anxiety goes up, a person's cognitive ability, their ability to speak, goes down. So having that form or that card to share takes that burden away from the person having to verbally say something, and just being able to share it for someone else to have that information in a key situation. And sometimes it's easier to have someone read information off of this card, and not have to remember tips to be able to help you. So a lot of people may not be proficient at self-advocacy, or may totally forget to disclose information in an emergency, which leads us to the next part. How do we teach these skills? So practice sharing the identification card and the diagnosis card. Have ask for ID on the back of a bank card, or when they apply for a new casino card, for instance. And then that way, if they use their debit card or that casino card, then someone has to ask them for ID because it's written on the back, so they can practice handing over that ID and their diagnosis card if they have one, and be able to, know what to do when it's not an emergency. Will it hurt if the cashier that you go to, the grocery store cashier that you go to regularly, knows that they need to wait for a response if they ask for your loved one ask your loved one a question, or they should use a soft voice? All of that's relevant information for that individual, and it wouldn't hurt the cashier to know that. So being able to produce that ID with a diagnosis card or tips to help that person lets them know ways that they can help the individual with a disability. And then the individual with the disability also gets to practice passing over that ID and giving that information out regularly.
Yep.
This will help in the future if an emergency happens, that they will know how to hand that over because they are more used to doing it then. Go ahead, Nikki. Sorry.
Yep. And so it's very important to, like Chris was saying, to let people know how to have someone speak to you, or know what to do in the case of a emergency situation. Like, for example, me, it's good to speak in a soft voice, and also let me speak to get out what I'm saying, because I do stutter. So it's good for people to understand that I have a little bit of trouble with that.
Right. Absolutely. And then to the last point there, learn to properly produce an ID. It's important for our loved ones or those with disabilities to learn not to rummage through their pockets searching for that ID. They need to ask permission to get the ID, or gesture that they're going to get it. So if law enforcement asks for ID, that person can say, can I get it? Yes, I have ID. Can I get it for you? That makes sure that the law enforcement officer knows that they are reaching for their ID and not something else, so they're not seen as a threat, or their actions aren't mistaken for aggression. We don't want something to happen just because they are reaching for ID. Additional emergency information. If an individual travels with family or staff, has that go bed, carries the emergency pack with them, an emergency one-page profile is a great resource to keep on hand. Also, it's great to keep one of those on hand for elopement, fires, emergency room visits, hospital stays, shelter stays, anything where it could be relevant for people to know information about you, like the most important information about you to help you in an emergency. That one-page profile looks like this on the right, and the sections are labeled on the left. What people need to know about me, what's most important to me, and how best to support me. We've given you some information that you can include on this form to use it as an emergency situation form. So you, on the top section, you can put your contact information, such as a nickname that people call you all the time, or what you prefer to go by may be different than your given name. So you want people to know that. You want people to have emergency contact information for those that they should reach out to for you, or your diagnosis or communication needs. In the center, you can include things like what's most important to you, personal items that you may find really important, or how to keep me calm if an emergency is happening. Things that I like or don't like, what makes me anxious, scared, or unhappy, and who's most important to me, or the special people that are in my life. And then the last section is how best to support that person, such as any support needs that they may have, or communication needs that they may have, any medical information or interventions that they need, such as an EpiPen for allergic reactions, like Nikki was saying about her mom. Or Nikki said that she wanted to, that people should speak softly to her. That can be written in here on her one-page profile for emergency situations. That she
And
doesn't like loud noises or sirens. Go ahead, Nikki.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
Uh, I so like loud noises, I do not like them.
right.
So on mine, it would be that. Or, for example, I have several cousins with autism, and they don't like noise as well. So a lot of people are different in situations.
Absolutely. And this should be personalized to that person that
Yeah.
it's written for. We don't want to have Nikki's information on an emergency form for my son, because what's relevant for her isn't going to work for him.
Yeah.
He may like the fire siren noises and things like that, but he can't be left alone because he'll go start playing in the truck. We want to make sure that people know that information.
Like, for example, it's similar actually to me a little bit, because I will be okay with the siren noises, but I will like probably be a little distracted when it comes to the what's going on and anxious. So
Right.
yeah, it could, yeah. And
Right, but
also,
it would be just as important for you, Nikki, to include that you have nervous laughter
yeah,
when your anxiety is high,
yes.
so that people know that you're not laughing at them or the situation, that it is a reaction that you cannot control.
No, and some noises actually do affect me and some noises don't.
Right,
And also like the name and nickname, my name is Ninoska, but I prefer Nikki.
right.
So there's people that prefer different names.
I'm the same way. My full name is Christine, but I go by Chris. So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This document can also be used for going to the doctors or trips away from home. If you have a younger child in school, to meet new teachers, a lot of different ways. So know that it's not just about emergency situations, but that's the way that we are using it tonight. And it's very dynamic because it can be used in tons of different situations, and it can be customized for whatever you may need it for.
Shelters access and foundation need
Function.
fundamental, yeah, functional needs. Sorry.
That's okay. Don't apologize. You're fine.
Shelters in place. Shelters in place means to stay where you are. Do not go to another location until danger has passed and officials have
Declared.
declared it to go out.
Yep. So, a perfect example of this would be a tornado warning near your area when they tell you to go to the basement of your house or the lowest place of your house. Or if you don't have a basement, to go into your bathroom or a room that is in the center of your home, right?
Yeah.
That would be a shelter in place order.
Yep. Shelter in place.
That means continue.
Continue. It is essential to have supplies in your home. Resign in case of emergency to support you for 72 hours. So, for example, if you are in a basement and there's a blizzard or tornado that Chris was saying, it's always good to have something, some food or some water in case of that. And also too, for example, I have 2 refrigerators, so I have one downstairs and upstairs. But if the electric goes out, it's also good to have like a cooler or something in case you need things to be refrigerated.
Absolutely.
Shelters in place. Starter list. 3 days of food and bottled water. Toilet paper. Yeah.
You're right.
Toilet paper and paper towels. I thought it was confusing both. Personal hygiene items like deodorant and different things like that. Disinfectants like sprays and other things just in case of an emergency. And it's also good to have an emergency kit with you, like band-aids or different things.
Yep.
Check ready Dove or Red Cross for more.
Yep. So those two websites, the American Red Cross or ready.gov, will have lots of different lists that you can go through to start to create your own shelter in place kit.
Shelters, what are they? A place for people to stay temporarily during an emergency, such as storms, explosions, or other disasters.
Mhm.
But also, some shelters are really there's places that you could go for shelters like schools and different places, but there's situations where it's small and sometimes they don't have enough space for people.
Right. They need to serve a lot of people in not necessarily a big space for a short period of time. So you're going to be close together and you're going to have limited space available.
Yep. Other shelters provides meals, a place to sleep, and stay warm or cool. Shelters work to accom- accommodate all needs. So shelters are good to stay in when you're warm and cool, but also accommodate needs means that they will be there if you need anything.
Yep.
Access and financial needs. People with access and financial needs include individuals who need access assistance due to any condition, temporary or permanent, that limits their ability to act. To have access and fundamental needs does not require that the individual has any kind of diagnosis or
Specific
specific
evaluation.
evaluation.
Yep.
Yeah. So that means that it doesn't matter if the person does not have a need or a diagnosis. What matters is that if someone can't do something or needs it, they will help. And can you help me more with that?
Yeah, so it means that you don't need a doctor's excuse in order to have the things that you need, right?
Mhm.
It's great that you don't need a doctor's excuse, you don't need documentation to that you have an access or functional need, but the responsibility falls on you to let staff know that you have a need to make your stay more successful within that shelter. Things like communication or getting medications, a bed near a wall, all of those are access and functional needs that may be important to a person that needs to stay in a shelter for a short period.
And also, for example, me, I have to, if my mom or if my parents are there, I need to make sure that there's like that I stay near my mom just
Right.
in case because I get really nervous. And if I don't have someone I know, then it won't be good.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is also referred to as AFN, the abbreviation. So we've put it on this slide just so you are aware.
Yep. So, what is AFN? Access, be being able to access the shelter, food, and support. Functioning, I know the word, but I can't pronounce it.
Functional.
Yeah, function need include support services to help individuals maintain their independence in a general population shelter. Example include the
Durable medical equipment,
durable medical equipment,
consumable.
conservable medication supplies, and personal assistant services. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's basically whatever that person needs assistance to potentially get into a bed. They need to have that bed against a wall in order to get into that bed easily for that person. Whatever they need in order to be in that shelter is what they need to ask for in order for people to help them. And it's the self advocates or the friends or family's responsibility to let that shelter staff know when registering that these things are needed. You can't wait, till everybody is getting ready to go to sleep to say, I need a bed against the wall, because most beds are already assigned by that point. When you are registering and you first come into the shelter, you need to let someone know that. So in an emergency situation, be prepared to share your diagnosis or the needs with first responders or shelter staff as needed. We just want to remind everyone about that. Tell only what you need to tell, and only tell how it impacts you and what supports are needed. Disclose that verbally, carry that disclosure card, or use the one-page profile in order to help you tell people. And your responsibilities are to know your plan, have your go bag ready, disclose your needs to first responders or shelter staff, and request only serious needs. You don't want to be requesting your favorite snack food or whatever the case may be. Or my son would request his Nintendo Switch. You request things that are absolutely needed in order for you to be there, to maintain your safety while you are there. You don't want to, like I said, my son would ask for his Nintendo Switch or a snack that they may not have, because that's not as important to the safety of the people that are there. Medical needs also, and food allergies, we've kind of touched on allergies a little bit, also need to be discussed. Disclosure does not mean that they need to know that depression started when you were 9, but they may need to know what type of medication that you're taking for that depression, so that if you run out, they can supply you with more or get access to more if you need it.
Like, for example, it's okay. For example, I need medication for my palsy because I get stiff. So if they need to supply it or they need any information, you should let them know, just in case you don't have them with you.
Right. Or you don't have enough, they can hopefully get some for you. Yep. Absolutely. All right. So if someone misses key directions when registering for a shelter or coming into a shelter, or talking with first responders, it could cause them to be hurt or to even impact others, including first responders. So communication is really important. If someone talks in an alternative manner, communicates in an alternative manner, such as sign language, uses a communication device, even in a different language, like our Spanish interpretation tonight, that information must be disclosed as soon as possible to shelter staff or first responders, because that person's safety may depend on that. If they don't understand, if somebody is verbally telling them to step back away from a car accident, then because they can't hear and they use sign to communicate, then it's very important for first responders to know that, so that they can help assist that person in an alternative manner.
Yep. And also, sorry,
Go ahead.
I was gonna actually help you with that. Also, if for example, my parents speak Spanish, so it's important for them to know if my parents need help with Spanish, and they could get someone that speaks Spanish.
Right.
Well, also, I stutter, like I said before, and sometimes the words don't come easily for me.
Hmm.
So if they know that I have to take my time and speak slower, that way they can understand me. I
Right.
could just let them know.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we've talked about this multiple times also, but we want to make sure that you know, have a list of your medications, including a couple of days worth of medications in your go bag with the medication name, the prescribing doctor, the dosage, the pharmacy that you get it filled at, and the reason that you take that medication. You don't necessarily have to write a diagnosis um, that pertains to the medicine, like depression, but you may list that I'm taking this to help me be able to communicate with people because my depression doesn't allow me to communicate if I'm not taking, or something like that. Like, you want to list out the reason that you are taking that specific medicine. Um, and this is important because your medication that you may have may not last long enough. It may get damaged in your travel to a shelter, or you might not have as much as you think even. So having that list helps the shelter staff be able to get your medication if you need it. This can also be important during hospital visits, to have that list of medications so that you don't have to remember everything right off the top of your head when they ask you, for what medication are you on? So shelters can be very different and uncomfortable for people. I know it would make me uncomfortable being in a small space with a ton of other people. So but they're really there to make sure that people stay safe in an emergency. Service animals are welcome. They will accommodate wheelchairs and support your needs as much as they are able, but it's not a home away from home or a hotel. So know that you may not be 100% comfortable when you are there, but they're doing the best that they can. And our job is to help them understand what you need or what we need, and to not keep running up to shelter staff to ask for different things. We want to be organized when we are registering and talking to them so that they know our needs up front and can better prepare for that. And only ask for what is needed and what is most important. Like I said, snacks or that Nintendo Switch isn't always important for everybody to stay safe.